Hi, I'm Pat Fiume. I've been a realtor for over 30 years. I'm a host of the American Dream Show. Welcome to my show, Is This for Real Estate? I'm here with Randell Jones. He's the broker-owner of RE/MAX of Cherry Hill and the RE/MAX Preferred franchise.
I think that we should do something different today for your viewers. Instead of you interviewing me, maybe I should interview you, because I think it would be really good for everyone to know how you actually got into the real estate business.
Okay.
So let's move forward a little bit.
Okay.
And this should be really good. You then came to RE/MAX.
Yes.
How many years ago was that now? Is it 25, 30, 20?
1992.
1992.
So it's 31 years ago.
Yeah.
I've been with RE/MAX for 31 years.
So here we go.
That's
Why?
Oh boy.
Why did you go there, and why are you still there?
Well, I actually was afraid to go to RE/MAX because I was still fairly new.
Right.
And RE/MAX was brand new.
Yeah.
There was literally, I think I was the 21st agent in the entire state to go to RE/MAX.
So you were a trailblazer.
So I was a trailblazer, but I just didn't know what I was doing. I just was dumb luck, really. But there's a reason, a weird thing happened. I don't know if I can even tell it on here.
A funny story, everybody.
Well, it's funny. Well, it actually is funny, and it's actually a very good story. So I was going to go to I was actually interviewing at another company in Haddonfield because I was in the Haddonfield. They put the Pennsauken office in Haddonfield, and so but they never opened Pennsauken because they were consolidating offices to make it saleable to Coldwell Banker, who at that point were only on the because when I came to RE/MAX we were Coldwell Banker. So what happened is Connie consolidated the offices down and sold to Coldwell Banker, who became a corporate offices, and then they franchised. The funny thing was, there was a guy who was the Cherry Hill manager who got fired, Bernard,
right?
And they wound up giving him, they sold him 6 offices, which was dumb. The interesting thing about that story, though, is that part of it, Coldwell Banker was only on the West Coast at that point.
Right.
They came to the East Coast when they bought Mafucci. They were not on the East Coast. And what they brought with them was a seller disclosure. And I had a deal with somebody in the office who is still with us, so I will remain nameless.
In Cherry Hill office.
Yes.
Okay.
Told me he had his cousin's house to sell, and he didn't want to deal with it, family stuff. So I list this house, and I do a seller disclosure. It was brand new, and it was like the first one I think I ever got filled out. And I met with the wife, and I had to go meet with the husband separately. And I'm like, well, where's the husband? They're like, Graterford Prison. I'm like, okay. And what's he there for? And they're like, conspiracy. I'm like, okay. So I had to go to prison to meet him to sign. Something happened later on. The reason why he was in prison affected things. And the seller disclosure saved my tail and got me out of a major lawsuit because of something illegal that was going on in that house.
Oh, okay.
And that seller disclosure saved my tail.
So Coldwell Banker was using a seller disclosure.
And they brought it from the West Coast.
And they brought it from
to
the West
East Coast. We didn't have a seller disclosure until 1988.
So who was the first person who approached you about going to RE/MAX?
So what happened was, believe it or not, it was the agents in my own office. Like, everybody kind of mothered me because I was in my 20s. I used to bring my kids to the office. They used to call them, Stephen Hoover was there, who was here for years. They used to call my kids little rugrats. Like, Connie would have we would be in the Haddonfield Day parades, and I would have all my kids. I took my kids everywhere. I took them farming with me. I got a funny story I'll tell at the end about farming with my kids. But, so everybody kind of mothered me. I was like, because my mother passed away very young. I was only 21 when my mom died. Not only did I not have a mother, I was divorced and I had 4 kids to support, and everybody felt sorry for me. So I got everybody's deals that nobody wanted, or buyers, they would give them to me to try to help me, And it was so funny because like people like Eileen Friedland and Gloria Daniels and
this is like the who's who of real estate.
The who's who, Joy Krell.
Yeah.
Eileen Friedland was a very good friend of mine because we started in Haddonfield and she moved to Cherry Hill. My first listing was that $1 million house. I started to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a very rude awakening because I get this $1 million listing, and then I found out I had to do brochures and advertising. I had no money. And Eileen took me to lunch and said, I will pay for all your advertising. I will have brochures printed. I'll do a Fortune 500 mailing. If you let me put my name on everything with you, because I'm planning to go. She was part-time at the time in Haddonfield. And she said, I will pay for everything if you let me put my name on your advertising.
Okay.
And she paid for everything. And we go to the swearing in at the Board of Realtors, and Ron Jaworski was the guest speaker. And we're like, the Eagles, an Eagle would buy this, an Eagle would buy this. So we're pushing each other with these little brochures she printed. Eileen's been one of my biggest supporters too, with Elaine. Pushing me to go up, and she goes, you give it to him, give him some. So because we took him with us, we knew he was the guest speaker. So I go up to him, I said, hi. He goes, hi. He goes, what's your name? And I'm like, Fiume. He goes, what can I do for you? I said, well, maybe some of the Eagles would want to live in these houses. He goes, okay, I'll put them up in the clubhouse. I said, thank you, and I ran away. I was scared to death of him. I was just very shy. I'm like, he's a celebrity, you know. Back then, he was the Eagles quarterback,
Right.
You know.
You've had a lot of experience in real estate,
Mm-hmm.
right? 30 some years of doing this. You've been a trainer. You've joined and been very successful with the #1 real estate company in the world.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell a new agent coming in that, like if you had to give them two tips, and we're going to keep it
Short.
We're going to keep it short,
Yeah,
but
so I
what
can
would be the two things that you would tell them to do? And then we can add on additional ones if we
Right.
want to explain
Well,
them.
I
Yeah.
will tell you the first thing my first manager, Pat Iezzi, said to me, which stuck with me my whole career, was I was going on this little listing. It was like $40,000 listing, and
Right.
she's like, "Where's your market analysis?" She was looking at my stuff. Do you have your listing agreement? Where's this? Where's that? I said, I didn't do a market analysis. She goes, why not? I said, because it's $40,000. She goes, like, I had been in a hurry. I had been on like 6 listings in the last couple of days, and I forgot to do that one. She's like, Pat, #1 rule, you treat everybody the same, whether it's a $40,000 listing or a $400,000 listing. They should be treated the same, and I've always lived by that rule. And I treat people the way I would want to be treated if I was buying a house. If I'm the buyer, that's how I want to treat people, how I would want to be treated.
That's a very good point. And if you gave them, if you had a second thing, what would the,
It was 2.
Was that 2? Was that 1 or 2?
Like,
That was 2.
Treat everybody the same.
Treat everybody the same.
Yeah, like from 40,000 or 4 million. Everybody deserves to be treated. That's their home.
Right.
You should treat them with respect. Always respect your sellers. There are some, I'm glad when it's over, and there's other ones I've become very good friends with. I have actually about 5 or 6 of my best friends I met from real estate that are very good friends of mine, like to this day, best friends. But I would just say, treat everybody the way you would want to be treated, like the golden rule. And I think you can't go wrong if you treat people with respect. And I guess the other thing I would say is, even if you're nervous, you have to go in acting like you know what you're doing. Even if you don't know what you're doing. I was taught that when I went on my first listing. I actually hyperventilated before I went into the house. I had a paper bag in the car. I almost threw up. I was so nervous. And the funny thing was, this guy, so I do this listing, it was in Pennsauken, which is my farm. And the guy actually sat me down. It was the weirdest thing. I just had this lot of dumb luck, divine intervention, I don't know. He goes, you did a very good job. He sat me down and started telling me, critiquing my market analysis, and I'm like looking at him and my walkthrough, and he goes, I was in sales for 40 years. He goes, and this is your first listing appointment, isn't it? I said, yeah. He goes, you're going to do really well. He goes, I am not moving. He goes, I just wanted to give you a chance to have a listing appointment, so to get your feet wet, because the first one's the worst. He goes, and he was another person, I don't even remember the man's name. I know he lived on Park Avenue in Pennsauken, that's all I remember. He said, but I just wanted to give you a helping hand. And that's the other thing I try to live by, and that's why I started this podcast, is I feel like we're all in this together as a realtor, not just a buyer or seller, but as a realtor, you know, we all should be helping each other, you know, and treat people with respect. But I always feel like I always try to help people, especially as I'm getting towards the end of my career. I want to help people coming behind me, so the professionalism that may not be there has to be taught.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who aren't taught that. And I think a lot of the problem is you see a lot of team members. You know, teams are great. And there's teams that are fantastic. And then there's other ones I see, because there's a couple people have come to our office and I take them out and I've taken them on listing appointments. They have no idea how to list a house because they were only taught how to buy a house, work with buyers. You know,
right.
So there's so many agents out there that flounder that could have been really, really good. But nobody taught them how to do things. And you know, I've taken
it's good that
many agents out.
Yeah, good that we have you there to help them with the education. And it's great having you part of our company. You've had a really great career, and we look forward to years more of helping people find their perfect home.
Yeah.
I want to
also realtors to be.
Yeah. I want to thank you for allowing me to take over your show and switching the seats around here a little bit. So, you know, to kind of wrap it up, do you have a funny story that you could tell us? Because I know that you like to do funny stories at the end of your show.
Okay, well, I actually have a real funny one. I was just talking about my farm. So years ago, I used to farm when people were still home during the day. So my son, Nick, was in this competition, and so that's the preface to this story. So I had this farm, and I used to take my kids with me. I used to put I had 4 kids in 5 years, 2 boys, 2 girls. The boys were the older 2. I farmed every month like clockwork. I always went the first week of the month. I put the boys on one side of the street. I took the girls with me. We knocked on every door and put something on every door when you were still allowed to do that.
Right.
And this one guy used to wait for me who worked for Tasty Cake. Now, this is a 2-part story. And he would give me like a trash bag full of Tasty Cakes for the kids.
Okay.
And one time he missed me, and he was so upset he ran down the street and chased me to the other block to give me these Tasty Cakes because I missed them. He missed me. So then, fast forward about 3 years later, you know, the kids are a little older, you know, and I didn't take them farming with me anymore. But in the beginning, I took, I think, for my moral support, as much as not having to pay for a babysitter at that point too. So I was broke. I was dead broke. And my kids got me in so many doors. Like that farm, I owned it. Like people saw me walk in a house. They said they would call each other. Pat Fiume walked in New York Avenue. You know, they're putting it up for sale. So I go on this listing, and it was in my farm. And I'm sitting at the table, and we're filling out the listing agreement. And the woman says to me, "I forgot to ask you, did your son Nick win the bike?" And I'm like, what? She goes, "Your son Nick, right?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "You used to bring him with you when you door knocked here." I'm like, "I used to bring all 4 kids, but yeah, Nick's number 2, yeah." She goes, "Yeah, blonde hair, blue eyes, real cute little kid, big eyes." She has these real big eyes. She said, "These big blue eyes." I said, "Yeah, that's Nick." She goes, "Well, did he win the bike?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." She goes, "About 3 years ago, he was in this competition." And she goes, "He knocked on my door, and I talked to the neighbors later. He knocked on every door in your farm. And he did win the bike that year. He was number 1 in the state of New Jersey in this competition they had for fundraising for some charity. And he won a brand new 10-speed bike at the time, I think it was." And I said, "What?" And she goes, "Nikki, your son Nick came and did your whole farm." I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "I didn't even know that." He was probably about 12 at the time, so it might have been even 5 or 6 years later, because he was old enough to ride a bike away from home. You know, he wasn't like 7 or 8. But it was so, and I said, "Oh, that's interesting, really?" So everybody gave him money. She goes, "Well," she goes, "your son's a salesman." He goes, "If people said no," she said, "your son Nick would keep on saying, but oh, please buy this, it's for charity, blah, blah, blah." And if they finally would not do it, he'd look at them like this with those big blue eyes and go, "My mom's Pat Fiume. I think she sold you your house." and everybody was, so they all bought something from him, the whole farm, because we used my name.
Well, you trained him right.
Yeah, it was funny. It was funny. I had no idea. This was like 6 years later, probably, or whatever, years later. But it was funny. It was a funny story.
That is a funny story.
Well, thank you for being a guest today. You kind of turned the tables on me, but it was fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you very much also.
All right, thank you.